The Alliance Française of Washington, D.C. is pleased to welcome Ms. Judith Umlas for the presentation today of Soulmates and Strangers. Judith W. Umlas is the author of Soulmates and Strangers, a deeply moving true story based on her mother's 70-year correspondence with a French pen pal, exploring friendship, history, and the enduring power of human connection across borders and generations. Judy is a longtime senior executive and thought leader with the International Institute for Learning, IIL, where she helped shape global leadership and project management education. She is the author of several books, including Grateful Leadership, and is known for her pioneering work on the power of acknowledgement in organizations and personal life. A passionate storyteller, speaker, and educator, Judy brings together history, heart, and leadership insights to inspire audiences to reflect on their own relationships, legacies, and leadership journeys. Authoring many books, Judith Umlas' first published written piece was in 1985, How Not to Talk to a Pregnant Businesswoman. Following this, she published The Power of Acknowledgement, Grateful Leadership, You're Totally Awesome, and Soulmates and Strangers, a recount of her mother's life with her pen pal Claudia, as Claudia was in France and her mother was in the Bronx, New York. Judith's mother, pictured here with her husband and Judith's father Paul, would go on to write and exchange letters with Claudia over many, many years, and each letter contained different things in which Judith learned not only about the life of her mother, but what life was like at that time period. In reading these letters, Judith learned about herself as much as she learned about her mother, and in this photo, Judith's mother was pregnant with her, the construction ahead being the birth of her first child. One summer when Judith was older, she went to France to go visit Claudia and her husband Mario in person. There, she learned to speak French, explored the French countryside. Judith learned very much about the French language and culture, in part due to the kindness showed to her by Claudia and her husband Mario. And now I'd like to give an opportunity to Judy to finish her story and to tell us more about Soulmates and Strangers. Thank you very much, Judy, for your attendance and for your presentation this afternoon.
They were just very not spoiled. What's a good word, Sarah or Catherine, in French for not spoiled?
Ils n'étaient pas gâtés. Vous n'étiez pas
pas
gâtés.
gâtés. Du tout. And they didn't expect a lot of life, but they still gave an incredible amount. And I was just so grateful all the time. Next slide, please. There's one before that. That one, yes. Now, I have to tell you that Claudia fell in love with my husband, Bob, my dear sweet husband of 58 years, Bob, way before I did. I thought he was kind of cool. He was 5 years older than I was. He went to MIT, he was smart, cute, but it wasn't magic. But Claudia read the letters that he wrote to me. I let her read them, or I read them out loud. And she said, he's wonderful. Judy, you have to marry him. And she and my mother, who was also in love with Bob, both of them, I'm hearing it in France from this year and America in this year, marry Bob. Well, I didn't want to. But then he finally, at one point, he got tired after 3 years of asking me to marry him, and he broke up. And then I said, oh, I think I'll marry you. And you know what? They were right. They were both my mothers, my French maman and my American mother. They were right. They knew that what they were talking about. And so Claudia was sort of in our relationship. Next slide, you'll see what I mean. She was just so excited she never had children of her own, but that was my daughter, Stephanie. Now she's 42, but she was a little girl then. And Claudia and Mario came to New York after my visit to France, and they stayed for 2 months. Bob's parents let them use their apartment in Queens, New York, to just do the city. And I met them a lot. And then we took them traveling to Washington, D.C., but it was so beautiful. And then my parents went to France, and then it was just back and forth for the rest of our lives. So what happened along the way, there was at one point By the way, your questions look really wonderful. I was told I should save them for the end of the presentation, but the person who just asked that question, I don't remember your name, but I was just about to say that they finally met in person when Claudia and Mario came to New York. After my visit to France, they felt it was their turn, and they came to New York. I think it must have been about 1975, and they just loved America. And Claudia spoke pretty good English, as it turned out. Mario was always 3 words. No matter how long he was there, he was just 3 words in his vocabulary, in his English vocabulary. But at one point, my son, my 14-year-old son's now 34, but he said to me, "Mom, I want to go on a trip with you." Actually, I think I had said at one point, someday we'll go on a trip together. So he pinned me down. When he was 14, he said, "Mom, I want to go on a trip with you, and I want to plan it now." I said, "Oh, where would you like to go?" He said, "I want to go to France." I said, "Oh, you never studied French?" He said, "I want to go to Lyon, France. I want to meet Mario and Claudia. I want to have lunch with them. I want to go see everything you saw as a teenager when you were there." And I was shocked. He's a packaging scientist, engineer. That's his trade. I mean, he's not emotionally, vocal. He does not do the, "Oh, I love you, Mom." It's not that. I would say, "Can I have a hug, please?" But he's a wonderful son, wonderful. And I owe him more than I can say, because I said, "Okay, I'll find out if we can go meet them." And they were thrilled. So Jared, my son, my 14-year-old son, and I flew to France. They Marion and Claudia met us in Paris. They took us to Au Pied du Cochon. Sarah, do you know it? In Paris, you have to cut your cheese soup, your French onion soup, with a knife. The cheese is this thick, literally. And we had so much fun. And he didn't speak a word of French. They spoke 3 words of English. So, but it was wonderful. And then I said to him after that, I said, "Well, okay, you met them. Would you like to go to Disney World or something like this?" "No, I want to go to Lyon now. I want to see their house. Take me." It was like, whoa, it was so amazing. So we did go to their house, and something that was hysterically funny while we were there, I had heard a little bit about this from my mother, but you walk in the front door, and my parents had not ever been to France at the time when I heard about this, but you walk in the front door of the tiny little apartment, and the walls are covered with, anybody want to guess? Posters of, you get a prize, you get a free copy of my book if you guess what it is. Now, if you already read my book, a few people may have done it. You can't say. Anybody have Catherine, anybody volunteering?
I don't see anybody in the chat at the moment.
All right.
But if,
Well,
if
they're
it comes
stumped.
up, then I'll read it out loud.
Okay. All right. It was Elvis Presley. 6-foot-tall posters of Elvis Presley here and there and there. Every wall was covered. And when we went to lunch, she had an Elvis pocketbook. You'll see that in the book. Everything was Elvis. In fact, she was president of the Elvis Presley fan club of Lyon. Do you believe that? I mean, it was hysterical. I got such a good laugh from that. And it was so delightful. And while I'm there with Jared, we're looking around, and we could barely sit down. It was so tiny. But she said, "I have something for you, Judy." And I said, "Oh, what?" And she comes out holding something, which I still have with me today. Another prop here. Okay, can you see? I never know the right place to hold it. Can you see it clearly? It's a lace bag that holds letters.
If you unblur the background, everyone will be able to see it. It's because the
Oh,
background is blurred.
really? Is that what it is? Look
Yeah.
at that. Can I do that, or do you have to do that for me? Because I don't have access to any.
And yes, it is when you are on your image, there's 3 little dots. You should be
Oh,
able
yes.
to unblur your background there.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Oh,
We see
look
it.
at that. You're a genius. I never knew that. I've been doing presentations for years, and I never knew that. Thank you. Okay, so you can see the letters, and the very first letter that she handed me was from my mother to Claudia. And I'll just read you. I think some people speak a little bit of French. I'll read it just very slowly. My mother wrote only in French, and Claudia wrote only in English. And then they corrected each other. It was so funny. You wrote spinach. You meant spinach. And a little chart too, and those are in the book too. But ma chère Raymonde, j'étais très enchantée de recevoir votre lettre. And you see, they use votre as opposed to ta lettre. They were not comfortable yet. They were not best friends yet. They were not soulmates. Je l'ai relu presque 100 fois jusqu'à je l'ai su par cœur. And I read them so many times, I knew them by heart. Je suis très heureuse d'avoir I can't read her handwriting, an amie française. So I have those. This is my mother's handwriting. This is a real letter, February 3rd, 1936. And they go up to the year of my birth, 2 months before, March 1947. And it was just such a gift. I took it and I said, well, I'll make copies of them when I get home and I'll send them back to you. And she said, why should I keep them? They are your legacy. I want you to keep them. So that's what happened. And I started reading one on the way home from France, and I just got too choked up because my mother at that point was very ill and she was really on her way out. And I could not read the letter from the spunky, fun, alive, alert person that wrote that letter in 1936. So I read the first one and I said, that's it, can't do it. But then about 5 years later, and this actually leads me almost up to the point where I'm going to be reading a little bit of a segment from the book. But what she did was she gave, after she gave me the letters and I accepted them, I decided I had to go back and see them one more time because she was in her 90s. Her husband was 88. And I said, this could be one of my last chances to see them. So on the way back to France to see them, I started reading the letters. And I'll read you that just before we turn this over to my dear translator, Valerie Galinsky, who is here. I'm so excited about that. But let's go on to the next slide. This has started to become a very interesting and engaging topic for many different kinds of groups and people. And I had gotten a note from the executive director of American Association of Teachers of French when I wrote an inquiry. I just said, what would somebody speak about? And I sent her a little summary of what I've just told you. And she said, oh, epistolary insights. I never even heard the word epistolary before. She said, epistolary language teaching via letters is really what's very popular now. So she wanted me to talk about what it's like to have those letters, to put them together into a book. And I did do that. And I got a professor from Yale who was so excited about it. She is hoping to convert the letters into curriculum for her students of French studies rather than have them learn how to conjugate a verb from a textbook. It's a different kind of curriculum. And I've been I got 2 front page newspaper write-ups. It's kind of like this topic is hitting home. And a friend of mine said, I was going to a showing where Ron Howard, the filmmaker, director, actor, was going to be having a Q&A with the audience. So afterwards, I thanked him for a great presentation. And I said, may I give you a copy of my book? And he looked at it and he said, okay, all right. And he didn't look like he was going to throw it in the garbage pail, but I wasn't sure he would ever read it. And a few months later, I got a personal note from him. Dear Ms. Umlas, thank you for the copy of your terrific book, Soulmates and Strangers. So evocative, interesting, and at times emotional. I'm guessing that the reaction has been strongly positive and that writing it must have been fulfilling and enlightening. Great work. All the best, Ron. Now, he did not answer my question when I asked if he would consider making a film out of it, but I'll go back to him in a few months and see if he still remembers me. So it's been quite an amazing journey, and I want to just go to the last slide. And your questions are so great. So I have to tell you, it's hard to ignore them until the end, but I'm sure it'll be more organized if I wait until just a few more minutes. Okay, so this is actually the very first letter and the very last letter in that little packet I showed you. And I'm going to just read you a little bit about the process of my getting started in writing this book. This is when they were in their late 80s and early 90s. And I said, after one telephone call to Mario and Claudia, I became very concerned. I had a distinct sense of déjà vu based on my parents' situations. Both seemed to be fading, and Mario especially seemed to be wondering if life was still worth living. His depressed state reminded me so much of my father's that it frightened me. Aging seemed to be an enormous challenge for them both. But whenever I called and spoke to Claudia in my rusty French, we talked mainly about the glorious summer we had spent together when I was 18. And then just the part I really want you to hear is, I decided I needed to pay them a visit. Claudia was then 90 and Mario was 88. I couldn't take the chance that my French parents would leave as suddenly as my American parents had. They both died within 2 months of each other in 2008. I couldn't risk losing the chance to say goodbye and to recount with them in wonderful and boring to anyone else detail the joyful and silly and challenging experience of what I still call the best summer of my life. I booked a flight and told them I was coming in that order. I emailed Alain, who's a dear friend of Mario and Claudia through his parents, and we call each other cousins now. We're not by blood cousins, but we are very happy to continue the beautiful relationship. And I called him to confirm that my French parents would be up for my visit. Fortunately, Alain and Claudine, his wife, felt that it would be a most welcome experience. Mario and Claudia were shocked that I would be coming just to see them. They kept asking me if I was coming on a business trip and adding on a visit, as if they must be an afterthought. When I told them that I was making the trip purely to see them because I missed them so much, they were deeply moved and happy. Knowing how hard any change in routine had been for my parents, I told them I would stay in a nearby hotel rather than impose myself on their small space, and that I would come to see them every afternoon for a few hours for the 5 days I would be there. They couldn't go out and walk around very easily, so we wouldn't be able to go places, but it would be a joyful reunion anyway. Of that I was sure. And by this time, I'd come to a more peaceful place emotionally about my parents' passing. I sensed that I might now dare to read the treasured letters. So I decided to take them with me to France and read them on the long flight. About an hour into the flight, I pulled the first letter from Claudia's lovely embroidered cloth envelope and began reading it. 3 hours later, while everyone was sleeping, I shut myself in the tiny airplane bathroom and started to sob. I continued sobbing for a long time as I entered the life, and forgive me if I do, as I entered the life of the young girl I had never known, the spunky, outspoken American pop culture expert I had the joy of meeting for the first time, who would eventually become my dear and loving mother. What a gift I had been given. I couldn't believe what I learned about her that I had never known before. The trip turned out to be the perfect time for me to express my heartfelt appreciation to Claudia for saving those treasures and for giving them to me so genuinely. I wished again that my mother had saved her letters from Claudia. Then I realized that I inherited and still had many boxes of my parents' writings, and still do. Most were from their participation in a writers' group, but I hoped then and still do now that someday I might find Claudia's early letters among them. If I do ever find these treasures, they may form a sequel to this memoir. And so that is where I want to take you before I show you, and we go to the next slide, that this book, it is made with love and legacy, dedication. I mean, it took me over a year to write, and then I'm really truly honored, and you'll meet her in a moment, to have a wonderful, wonderful French translator when it came time to translating the book into French, named Valerie Galinsky, who's a French language coach. And I was actually taking French language lessons from her before I dared ask her to translate the book. But anyway, as I started writing the book, having had experience publishing 3 other books, I took it to publishing companies, and they all told me what they would do with the book. They would take excerpts from the letters, and they would put their own writing into it. And I just got panicked. I said, no, this needs to be my creation, start to finish. So, I said, I'm going to have to publish it myself. And I need a publishing company. I don't want it to look like just a self-published book. So I created Handler, my mother's maiden name, and Wagreich, my father's maiden name, my father's name, and the motto, publishing with a purpose, because I wanted it to be books that made a difference to people and that made a difference to the world. And I really feel this book does that. People are, when they hear the story of it, they say, oh, I have all these letters in my attic that my grandmother left me and I never did anything with them. Or, oh, I have all these recipes that my great grandmother left my grandmother, who left my grandmother. So, that's part of the impetus of this. But it's also just to say there is a global connection that is possible. There are people in every country of the world that we can connect with, and living with them is a true test, but a wonderful means of knowing that cross-cultural relationships truly work. So I invite you to buy the book. For today and tomorrow, it's $14.95 rather than $19.95. So I would say if you can get it now would be the best time to do that. And I autograph every book if you want me to. If you don't want me to, you tell me, don't bother. But you'll say that when you buy the book on the website, you'll see there's a place for you to write what you'd like the inscription to be. So that's that. And then at this point, I am just delighted to have Valerie Galinsky with us. She's so adorable. You'll see her in person. But she's a native French person from Martinique. And Catherine, I think you wanted to do a formal introduction. So I turn it over to you.
Sure. So Valerie Galinsky is, she has her own company called Be Fluent Now, and she's a neurolinguist. So that means that she looks at the side of the brain when studying a language. And she's also a polyglot. And she's a close friend of Judy Umlas, and they both met when Judy was first looking for somebody to learn French with. And beyond learning French with Valerie, it turned into a great friendship. And between the two of them, they had quite an interesting journey when figuring out which words to translate. And between the two of them, they learned a lot about the nuances of linguistics, especially between French and English, and how to communicate emotion in a way that really speaks to an experience. So without further ado, Valerie, welcome, and we're happy to have you here this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure. I've been on many of Judy's Zoom meetings like this, and I always enjoy it thoroughly.
Thank you. And it's wonderful to have you, Valerie. And I just have to say, we started working together. Valerie lived within walking distance of me at that time. And so we would meet at a coffee shop or
During the
whatever.
pandemic, right?
Yes, that's right. But I think I was a rather feisty client, wasn't I? I challenged a lot.
Yeah. First of all, I have to say the book is so lovely. It's really, like Judy says, full of love. It's when you hold it in your hands, you see love in the images, in the stories, in everything. And that's what attracted me. When I read
Thank
it
you.
first, and then she asked me if I wanted to translate it, I had never translated a book before, but I said yes right away because it was just such a lovely read. It's really very
Beautiful.
touching, very touching. So yeah, so we did, so at the beginning when we were doing of course, we did the translation together. We discovered that the French language cannot be translated word by word. I mean, we know that, but every single sentence you have to put the emotions in them, and the French language is so much more, I don't want to say rich, but it's very flowery, as opposed to the English language is very direct. So every sentence had to be weighed, and sometimes there was some struggle, but I, try to hold my ground because French people are going to read this. So we had to, but it was a lovely time.
Thank you. And I have to say, I have shown this to linguists. I've shown it to my dear friend Alain Bouvier. I don't know if Alain is here today. I'm not sure if he was able to make it or not, but he's a professor at Sherbrooke University, and he gave it an A plus, or at least an A. I don't remember if he got an A plus.
Yeah, well, I grew up with a friend. I was raised by my grandmother, and she was a French teacher. So every day, as I was a child, we had to do dictations. We had
Oh,
like the French language was like really hammered into my head. I had to be, speaking perfectly because in Martinique we have Creole as well. So I was not allowed to speak Creole. It was very now it's changed in Martinique, but it was very interesting when I think about it now.
Valerie, did you feel uh, a sense of professional pride when we finally printed it and you held it in your hands? I mean, I'm sure you must have, but
I sure did. I sure did. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to say that I translated a book, because my focus is language teaching. It's actually coaching, language coaching. I coach French, Italian, and English. And doing the translation was an add-on, icing on the cake.
oh, well, you can translate every book that I write from here on in into French, okay?
My pleasure, my pleasure.
It's a deal. All
Yes.
right. Well, I think I'll turn it back to you, Catherine.
Right,
And
we have a lot of questions in the chat, so
good,
I
good.
will I will read them out loud. And one of them from Corinne wanted to know, because she missed the beginning, could you remind her how you initially met Claudia and Mario? I did say that one was the pen pal assigned to your mom. That's but how did you initially meet them?
The real turning point came when I was graduating from high school. Had studied French from junior high school through 4 years of high school, and was going to continue it in college. And my mother saw that. She saw how much I loved the French language. And she said, out of the blue one day, and for those of you who have heard this already, forgive me, but I really love to tell the story. So I don't mind retelling it. She said, Judy, how would you like to go spend the summer with Claudia? And I said, Mom, why would she have me there? They have no children. She and her husband have no children. What would they want with a teenager? What are they going to do with me? What would I do with them? And I was very negative about it. And she said, it's all arranged. All you have to do is say yes. And they had been plotting behind my back for months because, these are letters. And in those days, it was just, this was in the 1960s. It was airmail. Airmail was only 1 week instead of 3 weeks, but it was a lot of, excuse me, back and forths. And they had worked out everything from the date to where I would stay to practically what I would wear and what I would eat. But I'll never forget when I said yes and I committed. And the day I left this really nice guy I was dating, Bob, who was my husband of 58 years now. And I left him. And I remember getting on the plane, the first time I was ever on an airplane. And then I got to Paris and I rode in a cab. And I brought this for whatever reason. I was munching on foot-long carrots at the time. That was my way of maintaining my weight and not eating cake. So I had this carrot this long and I ate it in the taxi cab in Paris. That's one of the images I have. And they met me at the train station. Mario and Claudia met me at the train station. We stayed there for a little while. I think we had a meal there. And then we took the next train to Lyon. And that's where I spent most of the summer with them and in a little apartment. You may have missed that too. They couldn't fit me into their tiny living space, but Mario had a hat shop. He was a hat maker. So I lived with the hats for the summer. They were good company.
And thank you, Judy. Yeah, I came in, I heard the part about the little apartment and the hat shop. Thank you so much. That's a beautiful story. I actually had a question when I came in and you were talking about the hat shop. Did you get into wearing any hats around that time? You don't have one on now.
I hate hats. I mean, I think I tried on a couple when he wasn't looking, but it was not like I wanted to go home with one as my souvenir.
So we have a question, another question which is interesting, and I will go to Melanie as well because Melanie has a lot of questions, but I'll start with the people who have only one question. So did your mother's letters give indication of the World War II experience of Claudia and other French people? I suppose it would be more like the letters sent by Claudia would give word about the French people rather than the letter from your mother who was living in the US. So could you answer that question?
And that's a great question because what my mother did as a good listener and as a teacher, she became a teacher of third graders for her whole life. So she kind of spoke to Claudia like a grown-up third grader. And she would say, in your letter of March 7th, you said this. And she would, give me the quote. I would see what Claudia had said, even though I didn't have Claudia's letter. And she would say, you said that you can't get soap during this war period. I'm so sorry. We can get soap. But then she said, I really want you to meet the American soldiers who are going over there. There's some really good-looking boys. She was trying to fix her out. And she said, then you'll come, once you meet them, if you like them, you'll come here and you'll live in America. I mean, they were hysterical. So, and she referenced Claudia's ways of trying to get her to move to France. But the war years, I got little tidbits, but it was never a focus. I mean, there was the Nazi invasion of France in 1940. Nothing about it. And you would think, I mean, Claudia knew my mother was Jewish and my mother knew Claudia was Christian, but it just never became part of their exchange. Very little about the war except how hard it was to get this or that, and some of the culture. The funniest things, my mother had these great descriptions of things that she said, Claudia, you have to know about this. There are wonderful movies coming out. And she would describe them to her because movies would come to France, but 2 years later. So she remember this one, you have to see it. Or she described Harlem. My mother had never been to Harlem, but she's describing it from what she's read and seen on TV. And she said, that's a place you have to visit. So, I mean, they were just adorable. And I got a sense of who Claudia was in her letters from what my mother quoted her as saying. So does that answer that question?
Another question, I believe it's from the National Coordinator for the Alliance Française in the United States, Christelle Outremont, who's with us today. And she's asking, in the letters that you have, are they one or two or more pages? Do they always have the same length on paper? As I experienced that when we do handwrite to someone, we tend to have our own format.
Well, first of all, they're in this beautiful script. I don't know if you could see it. It's the European script, but it's American. My mother had a beautiful handwriting. And the minimum I have ever seen is 2 pages front and back. So this one has 4. Some of them had 8 pages. It was fascinating. She would just go on and with a lot of corrections for Claudia that would take up big chunks. And a lot of quotes. You said this, and this is what I want to say to that. So it was very like responsible communication. Just absolutely wonderful. And about 6 months ago, somebody who has helped us with our house, just cleaning once a month for 25 years, came in carrying a huge box. Because I told her I wish I could find Claudia's letters to my mother. I know they're somewhere. So she came in carrying this huge box. I have it over there. I brought it we live in part-time in Pennsylvania. And I said, oh my God, it's Claudia's letters. It's Claudia's letters. I opened them up and it's letters to my mother from at least 9 different boyfriends. And they're calling her Chickadee and Sweetie Pie, and I verified that these were real names and addresses, and I mean these are real people. 9 boyfriends. She's 16 in every one of those letters. 16.
She was quite popular, apparently. A question from Melanie. The first question from Melanie is, how did you choose the information to write your book? Because she herself has cards and letters from her mother, and many are windows into World War II and post-World War II United States.
Can you just repeat the second half of that?
Yes, Melanie.
Who's the question from?
From Melanie. She's asking, how did you choose the information to write the book? Because she herself, Melanie, has cards and letters from her mother. And many of these letters are windows into World War II and post-World War II America.
It was hard. It was really hard. I say to people, I think I said it to you just before the program started, Sarah and Catherine, my heart held the pen when I wrote this book. So I wrote what moved me and inspired me and delighted me. But being moved was probably, I mean, I cried through when I described how I went to the little bathroom in the airplane for 3 hours. I was crying the whole time because, you're seeing your parent, your mother, the way she was that you never could have gotten a glimpse from. So as far as World War II, it was not like, oh, I've got to make sure this is a good World War II book. I did contact the World War II Museum to say this might make an interesting presentation because the background is World War II, much of it, not all of it. And I haven't heard from them yet, but there is a historical significance. So you could certainly weave that in. And you know what? You'll see my contact information. I believe we have that, Catherine, right? We have the contact information. Oh, do we? No, yes, we do. So please write down or take a picture of it and send me an email. I'll be happy to share my thoughts about what you have and how you might weave it. I mean, it can be a memoir. Mine is a memoir. And I can't figure out if it's my mother's memoir or mine. I'm kind of like the third party here, but it's a joint presentation. And but those letters are treasures. There is nothing of all the gifts I have received in my entire life. Don't tell my husband. The letters were the most precious and priceless. Priceless. You cannot put a price tag on them.
Well, Melanie is telling us here that she has letters in which her mother wrote about how her grandma kept chicken in her closet in Chicago to barter eggs. So it's quite interesting. So Melanie also asked you, it appears that handwritten letters are in fashion. Obviously, like I said, I started to write to my own daughter since the January 1st, handwritten letters. Stationery purchases at shops are up. And so, did you, Judy, pick themes of letters and organize the letters when you wrote the books?
Not at all. But what I have found, I learned the word epistolary when I asked to speak at AATF, American Association of Teachers of French, because the executive director was so excited that they would have a presentation on epistolary teaching of language and history. I never even knew it existed. But yes, I have found that it's become a really exciting way to teach language and history. In fact, this professor from Yale is very interested in using the letters themselves, not just the book, or might be, the book as well, but it's really the letters that are the pure, this thing with the date. And I have stamps. I have the envelope with stamps on them and postmarks. So they're treasures. As I said, no gift I was ever given is more precious.
Well, in France, we have a tradition of novels in epistolary form, such as Les Liaisons Dangereuses by Laclos or Les Lettres persanes by Montesquieu. But we do also have this mistress of letter writing, none other than Madame de Sévigné, who actually wrote all of her correspondence to her friends, and in particular to her daughter, as a matter of fact, retells everything that is happening at court at Versailles, and eventually when she goes to Provence or when she goes to her own little castle. So there is a big tradition in France of letter writing that is part of literature as well. And most importantly, when you study an author in France, for instance, Flaubert, of course, you can study Madame Bovary and the novels, but what's more interesting, in fact, is to read Flaubert's correspondence with his friends. So that's what we do in high school in literature. In the sections that study literature, we don't only study the author's works, but also whatever the author wrote to other people, or like the letters of Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, and so on and so forth. We have one more question for Melanie, but that is directed to Valerie. So Melanie is saying that she sort of changes her manner of speaking when speaking French, and it's not fake. She just feels different in her brain, which I can attest for myself as well. It's a different personality. So she's asking does the personality change? Writing letters in French helped a lot in moving between cultures.
Oh.
Yeah, very interesting question, right?
Yeah.
I personally, I feel you do. It just brings you into another world. That's my personal impression. So I don't know. What do you feel, Judy?
I think letter writing is an amazing gift to another person, because it's not, when we do everything now on our laptops or on our iPhones or tablets, and you write it, I don't like that, change that, take out a whole paragraph, rewrite it. With a letter, you don't want to do that. You might, cross out a word that's sort of sinful, but you don't make changes, and you might say, oh, I didn't really mean that. I want to clarify it, but it's a process. And I treasure letters. I mean, I've gotten handwritten letters from several people, not a lot, but I don't think I've ever thrown away a handwritten letter. And I throw away plenty of emails and even nicely typed out letters that I get sent on a piece of paper. It's not the same.
It's not the same. The handwritten letter has the love that the email doesn't have.
Yeah.
You know, I've always told myself that whenever I retire, which is probably in 7 or 10 years, who never knows, but the first thing I will do is, close my email addresses. Because I will not want to be pursued by emails or anything. So I will disappear off social media when I retire. So I'll
Wow.
have an independent life off the grid.
I want to know if that's true. I'm
Well,
going
we'll
to call
see.
you in 7 years. Don't change your phone number.
No, I won't send your phone number because you need to be on the phone number. But we'll see. I'll probably have a very basic cell phone number.
Okay. Thank you, Valerie. I know you have to go, but it was always great to see you and have you
Same
here.
here.
Just
Same
sharing the joy of the project we did together. It was unlike any other.
Absolutely. It's an honor for me. Thank you so much.
And for
Thank you
me.
for joining from
I'll see you
Martinique.
soon.
This is from
Thank you.
an old Guadeloupean who's telling you thank you to the Martiniquaise that you are.
Oh, who is this?
Me, Sarah, la
Oh,
directrice des
Sarah.
alliances. J'ai vécu jusqu'à l'âge de 6 ans en Guadeloupe. Mes grands-parents paternels avaient immigré en Guadeloupe pendant les années 20.
Ah, fantastic,
Très bien.
fantastic. Oh, yes. Well, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you
Nice
too.
here.
Yeah.
Thank
À
you again,
bientôt. Au
Valerie.
revoir.
Au revoir. À
Au revoir.
bientôt.
Au
Well,
revoir.
I just want to thank to everyone who came in on today. I just want to remind you that Catherine did announce the Grand Prix Littéraire next week, which is going to be in person in French at the Alliance, but weather permitting, of course, because we hope that the streets will be cleared and that we will be able to welcome everybody. If not, we will have to probably push it back by 1 week. I'll discuss that with the owner of Bonjour Books. But the event in early February that we have around the International Tribunal of Violence Against Women, that one is online specifically because we will be in direct from France with the author of the book, which celebrates the 50th anniversary of that tribunal. So she's a professor at Georgetown for l'Institut Français des Amériques, but unfortunately the visa was not renewed, so she couldn't come back in the United States. So we decided to do the event online. Yeah. So that's why. So it'll be direct from Paris. It will be 2 p.m. on our end, but it will be 8 p.m. in France when she joins in. So I wish you all a good weekend, and please stay safe and stay warm for those of you who are in anywhere where the ice and snowstorm is gonna hit. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
A
everyone, for
wonderful
joining.
opportunity.
Bye-bye. And thank you, Judy, very much. Yeah, thank you.
This was great.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.